I once got my heart broken so bad by someone who explained that he didn't think that I was capable of love. Has anyone ever said something that was so damning to you before? I will never forget that. The feeling not just of the loss of hope that something wonderful was happening in my life, but, thinking, oh, I found the one. But the introduction of that poison idea that something was fundamentally wrong with me. And for a long time afterward, I tried to figure out, what did he mean? Because of course I am capable of love. But what was true was that at that time, I was not partner material. Do you even know what that is? I didn't know what it was. And this was a long time ago. And I've had a long time to think about what it is that readies a person to be not just a romantic interest, but like a good bet for life, an amazing catch, because that's what we all deserve to find. And you know who else deserves to find it? The person who is destined to find you. Now, if you grew up neglected or on the wrong side of the tracks, I did both. Recognizing a good partner or what it means to be a good partner is probably not something you learned at home. If a parent neglects their child or, blows hot and cold with them, it's so easy for the kid to grow up and get into relationships with people who treat them in that same neglectful, confusing way, or whom they treat in that neglectful, confusing way. And it's only because this hasn't been modeled for you. And we all know what this is like. You've been hurt. You were hurt before you even began having romantic relationships. So it's easy to come in guarded or defensive or avoidant, convinced that nothing you do can ever be good enough. And maybe if you're wounded like that, you've also chosen people like that. Maybe when you meet someone who's similar to the parent who hurt you, a part of you just shuts down without you even knowing it, and no love gets in and no love comes out. Now, when you were a kid, there was no other way to tolerate and survive the insults. They just went on and on, to your dignity, to the goodness of you that needed protection. Now, when two people get together and they're both carrying these wounds, the hurt can multiply. And when healthy people meet those of us who are wounded, their sensors kind of go off. They're like, even if they're very drawn to you, the unhealed wounds and the behaviors that tend to follow can signal them that you're not yet there. You're not quite partner material. And I say yet because by healing trauma over the years, I've discovered that these wounds can be healed, and I know you can too. When you're healed, good potential partners are drawn to you. It's like you come into focus on their radar, and they're looking for what we commonly call, partner material, and they see it in you when you have these characteristics. So, number one, these are characteristics of somebody with partner potential. Number one, you're not already in a relationship. You're not now in a relationship. You're not kind of in one. You're not in it's complicated relationship, like you see on social media. You haven't got people in the past, from the past who are pining away from you. There's no clutter there. You're very clear about what you do or don't want in a partner. And that's number two. It will be easy for someone to learn this about you. You won't try to make them into what you had in mind. This includes money, sex, marriage, children, power dynamics, relationships to family. You don't have to force anything there because it already fits okay. All right, number three, you're free of trauma-driven beliefs about yourself and about other people. Now, what do I mean by that? Things like, most men, they just want a mother, not a partner. We had somebody in a recent letter who thought that. Or, women, they're just trying to trap men into taking care of them forever. This is all just BS. Everybody's different. Maybe you've experienced patterns because of the trauma-driven patterns in you and what you end up matching up with. But everybody's different, and it's never true that all of everybody is just, fill in the blanks. All right, number four, you're curious about other people. You're not just objectifying them, either putting them on a pedestal or casting them aside based on how well they match you and your opinions. Even if someone is not who you are looking for, You can be kind to them. Not everybody can be your type, but they're still worthy people and worth treating honorably. All right, number 5, you're able to listen and hear what people are saying. Now, this cannot be underestimated. Listening is not just like a face you make like, which, I mean, we all have to do that sometimes, but that's not what it is. It's an ability to really witness another person, like you are taking it in. You delight in their story. You feel joy in their presence, not just like self-centered joy, but really paying attention to them. You're following along with the ups, the downs, the nuances of this person. And if you've ever had somebody feel that way about you, if we're lucky, we might find 1, 2, maybe 3 people in our lives who get us at that level. Oh, it's a treasure. It's a great thing. So to the best of our ability, we try to be that for everyone we meet. It's never going to be perfect, or it won't be perfect, when it's not that 1, 2, or 3 people. But you try to really hear who they are. And this is not the same as just being a big doormat who's just always the good listener and never gets asked any questions. When there's a real connection there, that's not what's happening. If somebody is that self-centered around you that they just like consume all of your listening and then just take it and run, well, what are you even doing sitting in the chair next to them anymore, or a second time? All right, number 6, you have good boundaries. I know, easier said than done, right? You don't rush in. You don't take crap from them, and you don't go out on dates and find out they're not a date or get afraid to even ask, is this a date? You're comfortable talking about who's going to pay for dinner when you're not sure. You don't get pushed into intimacy only because, you don't know how to say no or you're embarrassed. Everything can be either out on the table or reserved from the table very consciously when you have good boundaries. You don't have to tell new people everything about yourself. All right, 7, you don't have what I call lab rats all over your life. These are people who have feelings for you who you're not interested in, and you never will be. You know that. These can't be people who, like, if you did get somebody in your life you were really into, you can't have people who are jealous about that or against it or, trying to squeeze in or ruin it for you. Those are lab rats. You can't have people who are going to cause jealousy should you find someone who's right for you. And that means anyone who has a thing for you but you don't return it, or you have a thing for them and they don't return it, it's time to end that relationship. I know, strong, right? I talk about this in my dating course. I go a lot deeper into why and what the benefit is. But for now, just trust me, there's so much emotional availability power inside of that. When you stop sort of, like a little squirrel planting acorns here and there, it's like, I don't know, I might need somebody on a Saturday night here and there. Your emotional availability just goes down. You're not partner material. And think about how you feel or would feel if you got together with somebody and then you just kept finding out there were these other people who were jealous and pining away. It doesn't feel good. And a healthy person is going to step away from that. All right, number 8, you clean up good. Have you ever heard that phrase? Hey, you clean up good. And it means like, even if most days, we're in work clothes, we're grubby, we're not very dressed up, when it's time to get dressed up nicely for something special, or when it's time to dress appropriately, sometimes it would be business attire, sometimes it would be something kind of nice. Like, what if you got invited to a wedding? Now, this isn't just about looks. It's about taking care of yourself, honoring yourself, taking care of your health and your body, not abusing those things with heavy partying or risky behavior. It's not partner material. Now, number 9, you might have trauma. Many of us do, but it's not the main thing about you. Now, when you're new, when you're just like starting to heal, it is the main thing about you. There's a time for that, but it's not a good time to get into a relationship. When you're ready for a real relationship, you'll have access to your feelings and memories, but they're not going to control you anymore. So you'll be able to note, yes, this happened, and you'll have a way of talking about it without sort of unpacking the whole thing and ending up in tears at the restaurant and overwhelmed and triggered. And you're willing to work on that. And you can use your tools to regulate what's coming up. You don't look to a partner to fix you. You don't look to a newcomer to hear the whole story and carry it for you. And you don't blame other people for the feelings that are still, sometimes they just come for a visit, don't they? When you've had trauma, sometimes A little thing can kind of bring back some emotion. So rather than blaming other people, like, why did you make me feel that way? We can kind of own what's happening within us, our feelings, our triggers, our reactions, and work on them. And every once in a while, there's a time when you need to ask a person you're spending time with, can we not do that? Or would you mind if we don't talk about that? Because for whatever reason, it's like too much for you in that time. But remember, you're sort of asking someone a favor. It helps if you understand that you're asking if they can do something that would help you, only because you're not to the point that you can handle that without getting very triggered and dysregulated anymore. When you're first getting to know somebody, they don't even need to know all this, what's behind the scenes. Now, if somebody's got stuff that's so triggering for you that there's no way you can handle being with them unless they change, it's kind of a sign they're probably not the right person for you. Well, it might be worth mentioning, but just remember, you can't make people fix you. All right, number 10, to be partner material. You are able to be lighthearted sometimes. You can be happy in happy situations, and you can feel happy for other people when good things happen for them. Hearing their good fortune doesn't prompt you to get all jealous and go down the rabbit hole of self-pity or try to one-up them or jump in with tragic stories. Oh, that used to be me. Even though there is a time and a place to share that stuff, eventually. Number 11, you have good friends and you're open about who they are. And when the time is right, you're proud to introduce the person you're dating to your friends. Now, anybody who has to keep relationships a secret is probably not available. And I often, advise that for people who are, in sketchy relationships or sort of, guilty relationships or, having a relapse with an ex that everybody knows was trouble for you. If you're keeping it a secret, you're probably, that's your sign that you're doing something that is not okay with you. It's not just not okay with other people, it's not okay with you. Because if it is okay with you, you don't really care what other people think. Much. So, not a secret. You're able to meet the friends. Now, I would not introduce people to your friends like on day 1 or day 2 or day 3. Like, give it some time. And don't pressure people to be introduced to their people too soon. I don't think there's a magic number there. It really depends. But keep an eye on that. Being open about introducing you to friends is a sign that somebody is open to having you in their life. All right, number 12, you are logistically available. What do I mean by that? Logistically available means you don't live far away. It's not long distance. You're not planning to move far away or, go to grad school in another country. And even though it might be too soon to tell if you want to make a commitment to this other person, you don't have anything in the way that would stop you from forming a commitment with them. Oh, say like a spouse that you are only separated from, or they're living in the basement, right? So you have time and availability to get to know a person in real life, because that's what it takes. That's what dating is. It's a time when you get to know somebody, like, are they the one? And this is something I emphasize so much, like in my dating program and everything I teach about how to regulate emotions and intimacy with yourself, which is you don't go too fast. Going fast is a luxury for people who don't have trauma. Maybe it's fine for them. Maybe they can get in and get out and they're not, they don't end up just completely, flattened out with misery for months afterwards. If you have attachment wounds, it's another story. You can prevent so much pain by just going slowly so that you get to know somebody before you get attached to them. Now, what do I mean by attachment? I mean sex. Sex is the thing that really attaches. So it's possible to get attached without it. It's possible to have sex and not get attached, but generally speaking, that's the thing you're slowing down. So you don't go in and try to make somebody your significant other right away. You spend time slowly dating. It's what I call structured dating. So yeah, I'm referencing a lot of things that are in my dating course right now. But that's what I teach. There's a structured approach to this that allows a person with attachment wounds to sort of titrate that closeness, sort of go, get to know somebody a little each time, but not too fast. You don't go like rush right into a big weekend away together in the beginning. That's too much, because if it starts to get triggery and starts to bring out old stuff in you, where will you go, to go deal with yourself, to go come back to earth, to go discharge all this like intensity inside you. So you can end up really ruining a good thing by pushing it along too fast. Also, part of this is you don't try to make everything happen by text. And though you might have things that are private with people who you don't know very well, you don't hide the important things about you. And that would be like, that you have a child, or that that you're moving away, or that you're considering getting back together with an ex. These are important things that it's quite wrong to hide it from people that you're dating. That's not partner material. When you're partner material, there's no skeletons like that. It's just kind of like this great open prairie of possibility, and there's no reason why you can't step forward into it. And I'm telling you, healthy people can feel this, they can detect it, they're looking for it. And a lot of us who grew up with trauma, we didn't realize it was that visible. And often we get blindsided. You get into a relationship with somebody who's fairly healthy, and then it's like, they're like, I don't think you're capable of love. Why? Well, there's stuff that you can't see that are visible about you. Like maybe you don't even see it, so you don't even realize that other people can see it. The way that there's some emotional clutter, there's maybe some inner conflicts or some anger stuff in there, where the way that you talk about the people who are in, if you're like somebody who likes men and you talk about men in a harsh way, you may not realize, like it might be common for you to talk like that with your friends, but it's actually like a big red flag. When people who are thinking about dating you hear it, when men who think about dating you hear it. This could be anybody, men, women. But that's kind of who we generalize about sometimes, is the type of person who we're seeking. We can say just terrible things. And it leaks out that we have a pretty toxic belief about that. It's usually a trauma-driven belief that all this kind of person is just worthless, Oh, and these people, they just, they're no good, or they hate me, or, yada, yada, yada. The really beautiful thing about healing trauma is you start to be able to kind of open your eyes and your heart and see that all the people you meet are special in their way. You don't have to be friends with them. You certainly don't have to date them. But people are full of dignity. Every person has a story of their own. So we start to wake up that people are actually quite wonderful. And I'm not saying there aren't bad people. I'm not saying that there don't need to be boundaries there. But making big, broad categorizations about people, people get away with it when it's somebody, like there's some people you're allowed to put down, like, you could just say that and it's like socially acceptable. But ask yourself, would I say that about a marginalized group? If I said that exact words, that exact like judgy statement about some marginalized group, how would that sound to my ear? It wouldn't sound good. So if it's true for them, it's true for everybody. Like, just don't put people down. All right, healthy people pay attention. And they pay attention to how you treat others. And, it's one thing how you treat them, in the first few dates, but they're looking at, how do you treat the people who are serving your food in a restaurant? How do you treat other people on the sidewalk? How do you treat other drivers? How do you treat animals or kids? Or, people in your family? What can they deduce about your character by a few interactions that they see when they're first getting to know you? And so it's not just a show you put on for them. It's like the work of becoming ready for a great relationship is becoming a person who does treat other people well, who does recognize the dignity and loveliness of people, and who wants them to feel good about themselves when possible. Yeah. That's what lovingness is. And lovingness is a very attractive quality. That's an important part of partner material. Number 14, you're honest. You don't have any sneaky behaviors around money or past relationships or smoking cigarettes. If you smoke, you smoke. You don't have sneaky stuff around what you do online. You have boundaries, but you're able to answer questions about your life and what you're looking for in a relationship. Number 15 is you're considerate. So when you make plans with somebody, you show up for the plans. And when you can't make it, you tell them, I'm sorry, something came up. Can I reschedule that? Same thing. If you say, I'll call you, you call. People who say they'll call and don't call, red flag. And healthy people are going to notice that. Traumatized people were like, I don't know, everybody always treated me like that. It's probably something. It's probably my fault, right? Or maybe they have trauma. So we have these like special powers to like justify other people kind of treating us in red flag ways. And we don't want to do that. We want to get clear in advance. Like, what does respect look like? What does someone being interested in me look like? And that is that sort of consistent and honest behavior. So that's what we got to show up with for others as well. If you feel ambivalent about seeing somebody, you got to you don't have to tell them I'm ambivalent about you just yet, but you have to say, I'm not sure I can commit to that plan. How late, when do you need to know by? I'll be sure to let you know. Okay? You don't leave others guessing. You don't say, hey, we should get together this weekend, and then you just never get in touch, and by Monday they haven't heard from you. That hurts. They might have held their whole weekend for you. So people, it's shabby treatment. So who will put up with it though? Is people who are messed up, boundaryless, maybe have an addiction. Many of you know from my past that I had a couple of relationships long ago with people who were addicted, and at first I didn't know it. And that, when I look back, why would I do such a self-sabotaging thing to be with people? These were serious drug addictions, very serious. Why would I do that? What was attractive to me about them? It seems like in theory, I probably had a choice. If I had just waited a little longer, I could have met somebody who did not have an addiction or who was a little more, viable as a long-term partner. But what seems so good about that? And I think that what there is there's kind of a safety. When you don't feel good about yourself, there's a safety in dating people who don't feel good about themselves and who can't really hold you to a standard, who don't have standards even. That's great. If you can get away with maybe having an emotionally dysregulated outburst and lashing out at them, and all they do is feel sad and want you back, it kind of sends a message. A healthy person doesn't lash out in the first place, but if they did, that's somebody who tolerates it and just has no boundaries around it, the whole thing feels not right. The whole thing feels not right. So we learn our own emotional regulation, and then we learn not to put up with bad treatment like that. And we're honest, and we're not using fake emotions or future faking or anything like that to try to manipulate somebody into thinking we're great just to buy ourselves more time to decide, do I really want this person around? People are very special, and even when they can't take care of themselves because of their own wounds, it doesn't mean we get to take advantage of them. And an example of that would be when someone says, I'm really into you. And you go, well, I don't feel that way about you. Why can't we just be friends? And they go, okay, fine, I'll be friends. Right? What's really happening there? What's really happening there? A person, especially a traumatized person, they will say anything not to get left. And so we kind of have to take the high road on that one. If we're partner material, we don't just kind of hold people on a leash like that, or, what's the word for it? They're tethered. They're not really allowed to leave you, but they're not allowed to come close to you either. You're just thinking, I don't know, maybe my feelings will change. So we have to be very honorable about that. It's not just whether other people get hurt, and it's not just whether other people see us being, nice people or something. There is something in your spirit that knows when you're doing the right thing, when you're morally honorable, and it will reflect in this light in your face, in this shininess in your eyes, in your posture, in the way that you react when you feel vulnerable. Like when you have something you feel a little bit ashamed of, what happens? I don't know, let's say you have a conflict with somebody you're dating and you think maybe they're not into you. If you have an old pattern where you're afraid to ask, what did it mean when you didn't call me back when you said you would? I was kind of hurt by that. If you feel like you can't say that, well, you start to go down a road where you're somebody who's very easy to take for granted. So you want to remain somebody who can be honest about what hurts. And to be honest about what hurts, to be honest about what, maybe feels a little vulnerable to admit it, we have to feel like a clear conscience. Your clear conscience is what empowers you to be straightforward about that. A clear conscience so that you know where you're coming from, that it's not just me, that hurt. And so that also you're able to express your feelings without lashing out, without that emotional dysregulation that is so often a feature of unhealed trauma wounds. So learning to regulate our emotions is always going to be something that we will have to work on in order to have a good relationship, and we'll have to keep working on it to keep having a good relationship. It's one of the trauma wounds that can just get easily set off, so we keep ourselves in good shape. I have this book, Re-Regulated, and I talk a lot about that there, how to re-regulate your nervous system, how to deal with dysregulated emotions and the triggers that set it off. So you can get that There's a link below on the description section always, but you can always just go to Amazon or your favorite online bookseller and get it there, Re-Regulated, by me, Anna Runkle. Number 16, you feel good to be around. Now, can you control that all the time? A little bit you can. You're encouraging, you help other people to feel good about themselves. Now, what does it mean to feel good about yourself? It's like you have a desire to become your best self. You're actually in progress becoming your good self. And you feel hopeful, and you feel like you're getting somewhere, and you feel kind of sparkly, like somebody sees that you're going in a good direction in a way that's healthy and positive and fulfilling. So that's, when we have that effect on other people, part of that is because of compatibility, but part of that is because we are good witnesses to them. We're seeing them, we get it. This is a sign that someone is a good match for you, by the way, that you find yourself sort of getting up on your toes and trying to be the best person you can be. Not in a scared way, but like this good desire, like, I want to be at my best. Now, ideally, they also have that lifted up feeling around you. Number 17, you're self-aware. You understand your own emotions and you can express them without excessive fear or shame. Like, I'm sorry, I just feel so nervous. Don't be sorry. If you're nervous, you can express them. Say, I'm really nervous. Do you see the difference? So you can express your feelings without excessive fear or shame when you're good partner material. Number 18, you have empathy. Everybody likes empathy. Everybody talks about it, but it means that you can tune into someone else's feelings and respond with care rather than dismissing them or avoiding them or just being, getting blank face like, oh, yeah, I don't know what you want me to say. You've probably known people who act like that. Yeah, well, that's not partner material. Number 19, you're consistent, you're steady Eddie, you're reliable in showing up emotionally, not just when it's convenient. You show up at the airport, you show up at the hospital, you help move the heavy piece of furniture. That's partner material. Again, not to be confused with the doormat, with somebody you barely know. You're not responsible to move their furniture. But I would not advise to anybody who is asking me, should I date this person who, just always disappears when something hard is going on in my life? I'd be like, yeah, if you've been dating for 3 to 6 months and that's what they're doing, it doesn't sound like it's a match. They're not prepared to go that distance with you. That's not part of what they feel for you. Number 20 is, when it's appropriate, you can be vulnerable. You're willing to let your guard down and be real, even if it's uncomfortable. And 21 is you're open to connection. What is that? You don't automatically put up walls or sabotage connection through avoidance or hostility or detachment, running away or distancing yourself like, I don't care. You don't pretend that you don't care about the person. Have you ever done that? Like, a lot of us have dealt with so much weird stuff at home that, like, in early relationships or crushes that you ever had, you had to pretend, oh, I don't like you. No, I'm just like everybody else. It just feels so vulnerable and bizarre to admit that you're into somebody. But when you can be vulnerable, you can admit it. And if they don't like it, if it's a problem for somebody that you like them, let's get it out on the table. Let's just find out. There's nothing like, telling the truth about your feelings to sort of break the spell. Like if you're getting a little bit too magical thinking about somebody or limerent on them, tell them how you feel. And they're just like, oh, no. I think we've all had that experience, right? Where you're sort of surprised, like, oh, really? Like, I guess I made that up, but that's what we do. And we were neglected as kids. We have kind of a special talent for seeing love where there is no love. And so we check it. We check it by being honest. It's okay. This is what dating is. It's an implied mutual interest in people. So questions are allowed. If questions are a problem, if people act like you're pushing too hard to try to understand what someone's availability is, forget them. And I will tell you, I do get letters sometimes from people who have a lot of anxiety around relationships. And the minute they have had any contact with somebody, they're obsessing on whether they're going to get married or, what's going to happen to the relationship. And I get it. I understand that can go too far and that asking somebody all the time would be too much. So keep that in mind. There's a happy medium here where you get to be honest about how you feel and what you're hoping for And I think the reason we don't get honest is because we don't know what to say. We don't want to hurt other people, but most of all, we don't want to get left. We don't want to get left. And that's the great fear why we don't admit we like somebody, because we think they're going to leave us if they know. But I just want to point out that the more time in your life, the more months or years that you spend kind of hanging out with somebody who has friend zoned you, the longer it'll be before you have that shiny emotional availability that draws healthy people who do like who you are into your life. So that's how it happens. Sometimes you have to make an empty space around you before the good thing happens. And it'll feel like it's never going to, and I just can't dare end these things that are no good and not fulfilling for me. But this is how you be partner material. Partner material means you hold that high expectation for yourself and you live accordingly. So that's the 20 signs of what I mean when I say partner material. Nobody has all of these features, don't even worry. But there are probably a handful of things that I mentioned here where you have an outstanding strength already, and that's great. Celebrate that in yourself. If you're good at one of the things I mentioned, build on those, put those out front and center. These are your lovely features that you're really good at, boundaries, and you're good at witnessing other people. I don't know. You pick the ones that you're good at and stay on them and build them and strengthen them. And then if you heard a couple of items on the list where you're like, oh, I'm terrible at that, so that can go on a companion list of things that you may want to work on. You have a lot of wisdom inside about how to change this stuff, how to change a sort of trauma-driven behavior and start to work on acting in a way that is in your best interest. And I don't mean selfishly. It's never in your best interest to get into a sick relationship, nor to languish alone when your heart's desire is to meet someone to love. We don't want that to go on forever, but it does take time sometimes. So when you're working on something, that's the perfect thing for you to write down, to make it a conscious intention for yourself to learn and get better at it through practice. Every positive change we make is accompanied by some friction. Friction is good. Friction is how we start to see where the difficulty is and where the work is needed. We get a little freer sometimes, a little kinder, a little more healed and capable. Next thing you know, we try something new, we stick our neck out, we take a risk, and something happens. We stumble. And that's how you know that you've stepped out of your safe zone and into the zone of growth. It's a good thing. It's a good thing when you have tools and when you have support. Because making mistakes is a part of how life gets better. But making mistakes alone can be, it can freak you out and make you just withdraw forever. So you don't want to make mistakes alone. You want to have companions on the journey, people who are also healing. You want to be able to make mistakes and be able to process them and get the information that's helpful to you, to not freeze up or give up or beat yourself up. And the best way I've ever found to handle all the feelings that come up, when life starts getting more daring, bigger, your life gets bigger, not small. It's the daily practice techniques that I'm always talking about. I teach all my students. There are thousands of them now doing this around the world. And these are the twin techniques that help handle resentful and fearful thoughts and feelings. And this stuff, I'm telling you, it gets so cluttered up in your mind when, even when your trauma is mostly healed, it's just that it's like part of the injury of trauma. And it literally is. It can be hard to process the thoughts and feelings. So it feels like a big hoarder house up in your head. I've never said that before, but I'm about to make a video about growing up in a hoarder house. But that's what it's like. Your head is just so full of stuff. You don't even know where to start. You don't know what's real. You don't know what's fair to say or ask for. So the daily practice techniques are a way to, move those out of the way so you're not stuck, so you're not cluttered mentally and emotionally, so you can keep moving confidently forward with some clarity about how you feel and what you want. And I teach this. It's a free course. You can learn it in the book where I teach it in great detail. You can also take a free course and learn, the basics of this technique in less than an hour. Learn them and do them. And that is available if you click right there. And I will see you very soon.